Welcome to our webinar today on 5 things to support online learning. You're going to be hearing from some teacher panelists from the Beaverton School District. Your hosts today are Chris Giles and Nicole Carter. Our teachers are Rebecca Larson, Christina Schultz, Danette Foster, Bodie Hindley, Claudia McClellan, Jenny Corvash, and Christina Burns. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll just jump right in.
And you might be wondering, like, why are these 5 things? And so Nicole and I have been working together for quite a long time, and we've been working on creating an environment where we can support our teachers in online learning. And one of the things we've discovered is there's this common thread that we've heard, that we've talked with other teachers, and this common thread of those 5 things. Like, are you checking in with your students? Have you created a space where you can communicate with them? Are you giving a chance for students to get engaged? And it doesn't necessarily mean academically only. Engagement could be just, hey, let's just have fun. We'll hear some stories today. So communicating with your students, checking in, engaging your students. Are you providing feedback? Also holding office hours. And the last one is really what we feel like is probably the most important thing, because now is the time as teachers where we should be reflecting on what we're doing. I don't know about all of you, but I haven't found the manual for online learning in crisis teaching. And with that being said, I think one of the reasons why we feel like number 5 is probably the most important as far as the teacher is concerned is this is the time where if you're writing a journal or if you're writing down notes, it's a good chance to start doing that, because you might have to reflect on that. We don't know what the fall is going to take place. We don't know what's going to happen in the fall. I'm not going to predict anything. But if we happen to go into the fall needing to have some online support, what we're doing now, what you're doing now, hopefully will help you carry you successfully into the fall, or at least the beginning of that. So that's the reason why those 5 we came up with. This is not because we just pulled them out of the air, but based on a lot of our conversation, research, and communication with talking about teachers from all over the place, including China and other countries. So with that being said, Nicole, we've got communication up. So is there anybody who wants to share on our panel as far as what they've been doing with communication?
I think I'll probably throw it over to Bodie real quick, because I know she has kind of reflected on both kind of communicating and engaging her students and realizing that BBCing her students has made a huge difference. So Bodie, do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. I am somebody who will spend a lot of time on my plans and designing things, but then when it comes to reaching out electronically with my students, there's some block. I would much rather talk to them face to face. So after like internalizing that for a while, I decided, you know what? I might not have the energy to email all 97 of them individually and tell them that I miss them so very much, but I do have the time to craft an email that sounds like it's individually created, and then just BCC a bunch of kids that I haven't heard from yet. And so I did that, and I posted in the Padlet somewhere that out of the 25 kids that I emailed or I BCC'd, I got 3 kids who had previously been completely disengaged, emailing me, telling me that they were looking forward to seeing me. And so 3 out of 25 for 15 minutes worth of email communication, it's pretty good returns. So I also have been keeping a ton of emails in my sticky notes app on my screen. So if I need to repeat information, I just copy and paste and away we go.
Awesome. And then I want to throw it over to Danette real quick, because she was mentioning something to me yesterday about engagement with students through Zoom for fun. So Danette, I don't know if you want to extrapolate a little bit more on that.
Yeah, my team and I have been doing a lot of just trying to get kids to engage in some way. And so we've been doing a weekly team meeting on Zoom where kids can just literally check in and there's no work required. And for instance, last week we had a scavenger hunt and we had kids go run off and get something fluffy. We had a lot of pets. And something silly. We had a lot of younger siblings, right? Just fun things that they can connect with. And while we were doing the scavenger hunt, we threw in like hot tips for distance learning, like check your calendar, make sure you watch the video lessons, right? Little things to try and prompt them to maybe do something that's academic, but in a fun, connected kind of way.
And then I'm going to throw it over to Jenny real quick because she kind of was talking a little bit about something similar to Bodhi's mentioning of using the sticky notes app. So I don't know if Jenny, you wanted to maybe talk a little bit about your playlist Google Doc that you've got.
Yeah, I just made a Google Doc because I kept on getting these emails that I felt like I was answering the same thing over and over and over again. So I just copy pasted all of those answers to all those questions in a little Google Doc. And then sometimes I'll just share that out to the students, or I'll just copy paste it into an email. So very similar to the sticky note thing. And then there was one other thing that me and some of the other teachers that teach the same classes, we often have to email out the same information. And so when one of us emails something to like the entire class, we'll just include the other teachers. And so then they can, instead of crafting a whole email that says the exact same thing, they can just copy paste it, saving us all some time.
Perfect. And then Claudia, you mentioned actually previously before we started our live webinar here, you were talking about use of Instagram to connect with your students. So I was curious if you could share a little bit more on that.
Absolutely. So I feel like my students feel very special when I post pictures of activities that we've been doing in our classroom. And then I noticed like a bunch of kids even from other classes follow me because they are friends or their friends in our activities. So I ending with a bunch of messages from my kids, like they're in the phone and like, hey, what is due today? I don't understand the class or whatever. So we just communicate a lot with Instagram, and I love it, and the kids like it as well.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea to go where they already are. So excellent. And then I wanted to touch base with Christina because she was kind of mentioning something with consistency that I think we're hearing that again and again, both from, ironically, from students and from parents about how key consistency is in use of our program. So I don't know if Christina, you want to jump on. Oh, and I'm talking, I think, about Christina Schultz. We have two Christinas on our panel, so I want to make sure I'm talking to the right person.
You're talking to Christina Schultz. Yeah, so one of the things that we've talked to a lot of our parents, and with all of the different formats and the different kinds of applications that are being used, they want that communication as well to understand how they can best help their student. So one of the things Westview started at the very beginning is to ask all of the staff to send out an agenda or what was going on for their students at a specific time and a specific day of the week, depending upon when their class periods were. And parents have really reflected on that because they have said that it helps them to know when they're supposed to check in with their student and help them accomplish what they need to for the week. In addition, another way that we've tried to contact with parents and students and get feedback is using Google Forms. So it's super simple and it's fast. And one of our other lits in a different school was reflecting on that, sending out a Google form, having it be multiple choice is a great way to communicate with students because they can do it on their phone, they can do it on multiple formats, and then you can get that really quick feedback about whether or not they heard from you.
Perfect. So I don't know if any of our other panelists want to jump in real quick, or we'll move on to thinking about like student engagement a little bit more. All right, we'll jump into engagement. So I think I'll kind of come back to Christina, you were just on, so I'm just going to throw it back to you again. You mentioned passion projects like Genius Hour and offering a lot of different multiple formats for students to give show their learning. So I'm wondering if you can share a little bit more on that.
Sure thing. So one of the things that we at Westview have done is the social studies department and the language arts department have combined together to come up with a project. Initially, we had talked about doing some kind of COVID project, but some people had thought that that might be a little bit too much for kids right now. So instead, we left the topic open-ended, so students can kind of choose a topic that really resonated with them and then work with the social studies teacher to provide some historical background drop for that. And so the language arts department is working with their team to make sure that kids can choose a topic of their interest and then do some literary writing according to it. And the kids are really getting on board. So their topics right now are anything from space travel to voice and sound, which is kind of awesome. So they're looking into all of the history and they're doing a lot of writing. and they're having a lot of discussions in order to give each other feedback and tips. So really having them collaborate is also getting them to engage.
Awesome. Um, and then Danette, you and I were talking a little bit yesterday in a Zoom call about like student engagement. And you kind of, you asked a really poignant question. So I was wondering if you could kind of go back to that conversation and share a little bit with everybody else.
Yeah, I think we were talking mostly about what we mean by engagement and how many kids can we really expect to be engaged, and what would successful engagement look like. I feel like I've really had to kind of tamp down my expectations around what how many kids I really want or really can expect to connect with, and also how that's going to look. Right, it might not be that they're going to get on and do every single assignment that I posted and do an amazing job. Maybe it means that I'm going to get one kid this week to do something, to try one assignment, who hasn't been doing anything the whole time. And I think that that's been the hardest part for me, is just to try and figure out, like, what should I really be expecting at this point.
I love that. Yeah. Bodhi, I'm gonna throw it over to you a little bit, because you had a really interesting take. Bodhi, Danette, and I were all in on this conversation. And I really loved what you said about the engagement with academic content versus what else do I need to do to get them engaged. So I don't know if you want to go off on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was having a bit of a rough time realizing the amount of work I was putting in versus how much I was seeing back in our learning management system, our Canvas. And I was thinking to myself, like, okay, I might need to take a step back from the learning targets and reconsider what it is that I really value about teaching and what I really hope kids get out of this. And it's honestly having positive interactions around school so that they stay with us, and that when they come back to the school building eventually, they're excited and they know they've got someone on their team. So in the classroom, I would have probably 85% of my students like with me, and 15% where I'd really have to do a lot of individual work. And now that we're in remote learning opportunities, it's kind of switched. 15% of my students really engaged with the classwork, and the other 85% of students are honestly, I'm hearing some struggles, anywhere from how do I click on a link all the way up to, like, do you think I need a 4th paragraph for chapter 3 in my informational booklet? So what I've been rethinking about engagement is, how do I provide the opportunity for that 85% of kids who are not engaging as much with the academic work, and still provide them opportunities to feel successful at school. So that's turned into one kind of ongoing reading, not a project, but like a reading activity that we do week by week. And then my second lesson of the week, I'm trying to turn into like mini micro bites that they can click on from the calendar, open it, read it, do it, finish it in 20 minutes, so that they know they've done something in humanities. Their adult didn't have to harass them about it. They could understand it and be successful at least once a week, but has become really important to me.
And I think we at one point were kind of talking a little bit about, you kind of surveyed them too, where you said, if it's not academic, what other way do you need support? And so then that's kind of, I know I've had multiple conversations with teachers in our own district and teachers across the country, where this kind of idea of talking about mindfulness and talking about relationship building has become such pivotal, important work. So yeah, so we've got in the chat, pay attention to the Padlet, because Bodhi did share some of her approaches of what's working on the Padlet. And then I want to also come to Jenny, because Jenny had a great comment about relationships with students prior to going to remote learning. So I was wanting to let Jenny speak to that a little bit.
Yeah. So I'll tell a little story. I have a student that this is the second time that he's been in my class, and I don't know why, but he's a very shy kid, and he wasn't really engaging so much when we were in class. And so, like, to try to get him to engage when we're remote learning seems like near impossible. So I had called his mom to see if I could get him, because he hadn't even like logged on. And his mom had said something that I did, I don't even know how long ago, like made him feel bad. And that's why he's not engaging in my class. And so like the very first thing I did is he got onto the Zoom call and I just apologized. I was like, look, I don't know. And like, I think building that relationship with the kid kind of helped, because now he's starting to engage, he's starting to log on. So I think like especially for those students that we didn't have good relationships with before all this happened, kind of trying to pull them in and building a relationship first before we try to get them to engage can be very helpful.
Love it. Thank you. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm getting side texts from Chris saying we need to pay attention to our time. And I think that this is so valuable. So I really appreciate everyone's pieces that they're getting. We're going to move on, I think, to feedback. But if there's something that I've missed and you want us to go back to it, any of the panelists, please let me know. But I'm going to jump into thinking about feedback with students. I'm going to ask if we haven't necessarily heard from Christina Burns or Rebecca, if you guys want to jump in and talk about anything that hasn't been touched on yet.
In terms of feedback or
anything you want to talk about.
Well, I've had surprisingly really high engagement compared to like other classes at the same like school. And one thing that I worked really well as a teacher, and I at Sunset we have this ability with our freshmen particular. So we have this lucky opportunity that I share the exact same group of students with a history teacher, and we teach together. So we actually decided to start having our meetings for Zoom where students check in together as a unit. And that has worked really well. And I think it's one less thing for students to do, because one thing that I noticed in terms of engagement when I sent out a student needs survey, like how they're feeling, anxiety, is a lot of students said they open Canvas or their platform for school and they instantly feel overwhelmed and that they can't achieve their tasks. And so any way to reduce the load for them, like as adults, we know if we open our email and we see that we have 100 emails, that's way more daunting than if we have 5. So I have tried to send out few but really clear and consistent instructions, and I struggled at first because I thought what I was doing was boring, because every lesson was basically the same, every layout was the same, but surprisingly students said that they really liked that because they felt confident. So something I've reflected on is I just want my students to open my assignments and feel like they can achieve it, they can do it quickly, they can feel good about themselves, rather than opening and feel like it's a daunting task for them. So if anything, I want students to feel like they can do well on their own and they can build self-motivation to accomplish work in my class.
Yeah, it seems like as we keep going through these weeks, that's the same message. I heard Bodhi kind of say something similar earlier, that consistency is so key. And yes. I can speak too as a parent in the district that when I'm seeing consistent usage of the different platforms, that helps me navigate as well.
Right.
To set her up for success. Yeah.
And I use Zoom where I film myself and I screen share, and I will just open the Canvas page that they'll see and I'll point to exactly the link that they need to click on, because I think like Bodhi was saying, students don't know they forget how to click on a link. They forget where the submit button is. These tasks that as adults we know it's almost like second nature for us. They forget that without the help, and just showing them where the submit button is, I've seen a much stronger turn-in rate and success.
Yeah, Jenny, you were mentioning that at one point too, that they oftentimes don't know where to get to see their feedback. Like we're giving them great feedback, but they don't know how to see it. So I don't know if you want to speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, and I think kind of speaking to what you were talking about the they log into Canvas and they just see so many things coming at them, and they have this like giant to-do list. Going and taking a look at what feedback you got from a teacher is probably not high on your priority list. And so the only thing that I think for me that has worked is when I do give them feedback through Canvas or on their Google Doc, I'll make a comment or something, is to actually email them and tell them like, hey, I gave you some feedback on this. Can you go and read it and then resubmit? Because if I don't ask them to like resubmit, they have too many things to do and they're just not going to do it. And then the other thing is, I think that they just don't know where to look for feedback. They don't even know that I'm giving them feedback. So just letting them know that we're actually doing that and showing them like with a screencast of you checking feedback on Canvas is a really great way to teach them how to do that.
And then lastly, in terms of feedback, there's so much more we can go on this, but Bodhi, you mentioned because it's Teacher Appreciation Week, you got something in the mail, snail mail, and I was wanting you to kind of share with us like your thoughts on that.
Oh yeah, our admin sent us all handwritten letters, which was so nice. And so I've been in contact with them almost every single day, and still getting the handwritten letter from my principal in the mail meant a lot to me. So I'm definitely not ready to sit down and handwrite 97 letters to students, but there are some things that I can do to kind of make sure that each kid knows that I'm thinking about them and just them.
Yeah, great. Okay, so I'm gonna move on to how are we providing office hours, which kind of also ties in with feedback. Just how are we giving that information and time and space to our students? And I was wondering if Claudia, you could speak a little bit to your different approaches and how you're doing that.
So I be using Zoom and allowed me to have the certain times for the kids. And believe it or not, it's amazing how kids check in just for say hello, because they say they miss me and I miss them, and it's very emotional time. So sometimes it's not about questions for my classes, it's more like just checking in. They're lonely and they want to see teachers' faces. So we do Zoom. We also I do a lot of emails, phone calls, just kind of checking with kids. And then if I don't hear from them, send an email with a little picture or note or something like, I miss you. It means a lot for them because they feel like, oh my gosh, this teacher care, So this week I get a bunch of emails from a lot of students thank me and say, even I don't know, I make a lot of difference in them. So it's very nice to hear that from my students. So.
And I'm curious, out of any of our panelists, how are you handling making phone calls? Are you calling from just your regular phone? Are you using Google Voice? I don't know if anyone wants to speak to that piece.
I've been using my cell phone and just dialing *67 before the phone number. And I will sit because sometimes people just won't show up for my office hours. And so I will sit with the screen on Zoom and I'll just start calling. I have my list of students that haven't engaged or haven't checked in a while. And I'll just start calling them and I'll say, hey, can you get on Zoom? And sometimes it's like, oh, I don't even know how to do that. So then I'll walk them through on the phone, how to log in to your email, click on the link that I sent. Oh, you have to start your audio. Okay, now you have your audio. Let me hang up the phone. And now we're talking through Zoom. And then a lot of times, they won't know that they're supposed to do this assignment because they don't know, they don't have their announcements turned on to notify them when I create an announcement or create an assignment. So I'll have them screen share through Zoom with me and I'll walk them through okay, click that button, click here. This is where your assignments show up. So giving them that direct, this is what you need to do and here's how to do it. That's how a lot of my office hours go, is just calling students and having them log on and me telling them what to do.
I really like the use of just saying, well, I'm not going to just sit here with with a blank screen and no one showing up, and actually using that time to call your students. I think that's pretty a good use of your time.
Can I add something with Janine say? I been doing videos step by step. Step number one, to use, how you can go with your assignments, how you can find emails and all that kind of stuff. Because when they see a video, they may be more willing to do it versus reading, because they don't like to read.
Okay, so there's so much more I feel like we have to talk about here. So I'm watching our time, and we really are running.
I think we're doing fine. I think where we on right now, office hours, and then we have our reflection piece.
The reflections, yeah. But then throwing it back out and opening it up for questions and taking a look at the Padlet. So I'm just like, I'm trying to pay attention to how we're going here.
Yeah, no, I think we're doing fine. We're doing fine. And like Nicole said, any of our panelists who want to pipe up, please feel comfortable. And friends back home and on the audience in the chat, if you have questions for any of the panelists you want to ask, if somebody's kind of piqued your interest, please, by all means, ask those questions in the chat.
I'm going to kind of go one back to, I guess I didn't change it out of office hours, but I know I was talking with Bodhi previously about her kind of pendulum swinging one way and the next on how she's scheduling office hours. And I think it's pretty unique. So I was wanting Bodhi to maybe pipe up a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. At first, when I heard that we were going to be using Zoom, I think we all had a lot of concerns about managing student choices and choices of others who are not our students. So I originally got everybody signed up in these little pods of 8 kids only, according to their reading level. And I had these beautiful dreams of oh, they're going to have individualized learning targets and we can talk about it every week and everyone's going to become great readers. And so I ended up with 13 30-minute Zooms every single week. And surprise, surprise, I got a little demoralized when I only saw 50% or fewer of my students each week. So now I am kind of swinging that pendulum back a little bit, where instead of 13 groups, I'm looking at redesigning and kind of consolidating some of them. So instead of 13, maybe 8 groups. But I do really like knowing exactly who I have invited into office hours that day. I am expecting to see these 12 or some of these 12 kids who are approximately at this level, and I have my resources ready to share with them or walk them through the learning management system, as others had said before. I do want to say that a colleague of mine wanted to do a similar approach of scheduled office hours, and instead of doing ability-based, she did social groups-based. So she has groups of 8 kids who are all buds, and she let them decide what topic they wanted to do readings on. So maybe every week she'll shoot them a poem or a short story, and then they'll come back and talk about it. And guess who has higher engagement? So some different strategies to consider, but I definitely like the scheduled times.
I like the social group idea for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to transition us into our last and final one, and thinking about teacher reflection, and just wanting to know if there's anyone. I've got a few people here that I can call in specifically, but any of our panelists that we haven't heard from. Don't know if Rebecca wants to share anything, or Christina Burns jumping on again.
Yeah, I have, hi everyone, absolutely been reflecting and kind of tweaking as I go. I think for me, the hardest part is not being in front of my students live, where when I'm teaching something or am I doing something, I can see kind of their body language or what they're feeling about things. And so you just kind of put stuff out there. So like Christina Burns had mentioned, I've been doing kind of like Google Forms or something where I can say, hey, what's working, what's not. The first week that we did that, one of the things that the students said was, we definitely need more videos. Like, we love when you make videos. And so I linked one of my videos in, and they're short. My videos sometimes are like 2.5 minutes, and sometimes they're like 8 minutes. They're typically under 10 minutes. But it's always me with my little face in the corner, and then oftentimes I have the screen. But that feedback loop, I think, has been really hard. So any way that you can have students react, even if you use Zoom, like the little thumbs up, you can have students, even if they don't want to show their face, do the little thumbs up, or in the chat. you can have them respond very quickly, like, hey, are you guys all, on board? Any questions? And so for me, like in reflection is how can I always kind of make it better for students? So that's what I'm always kind of like gathering and then tweaking as I go.
I love that. I'm sorry, I'm reading Megan's comment. Megan is a fellow BSD teacher, and she's talking about the fact that there are some students that have really blossomed in this environment. And I'm wondering if any of our panelists have kind of seen that too. Have you had any students that you've maybe been able to reach specifically and see something that you maybe didn't see in that face-to-face classroom?
I definitely have. This is Jeanette. I have multiple students who are severely autistic, and all of the ones that I'm thinking of have taken this opportunity and really like gone above and beyond anything that that we've been doing in the classroom. I think taking out the social aspect for them has been kind of an amazing new experience for them that they haven't had. They don't have to struggle with that. So there's some things that are just have been really amazing about this situation.
And then I kind of want to throw it over to Claudia, because I know she's reflected a little bit about what she was doing in the first 2 weeks versus what's happening now. And I wanted you to speak to that a little bit.
So the first 2 weeks, I got all the, any training that could help me for my online classes. And then I get overwhelmed and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even remember what I would do with this app or blah, blah, blah. So I narrow by my subject. And then I start reflecting what it works for my class and what is fun and things like that. So it helps me to feel very confident to focus on 2 apps that I'm using the most, and then help my kids to be able to use it as well. And then we have so much fun now. So thank you, Christina, from my building, and all the support I have in all the time. Thank you so much.
Anyone else? Have you had a unique situation where you have actually reflected on your own pedagogy and kind of changed how you've moved forward from beginning to now?
So one of the things that we started, an online program that we started using in math as we kind of transitioned into this distance learning, is a program called Alex. And I was using it before just in one of my classes, but then now we're using it in all of our classes, in all of my classes. And it's a go at your own pace math kind of curriculum. And I think for some of my students, it's really been a huge asset to them, because they're not getting questions that like they just have no idea how to do. So I'm thinking about for next year, or for whenever we come back to actual building school, to keep using that as part of like the homework, so that the kids can actually engage. Because sometimes I would give them paper homework and everybody the same problem, and half of them wouldn't even know how to start. So that's something that I think has changed my practice, that I would really like to keep on using this program later on, because it's worked for a lot of my students.
And Danette, you were kind of talking about the fact that you've been doing some videos and uploading them to YouTube and kind of paying attention to the analytics on YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like since some of the only feedback I'm getting from some students is like raw data, I've been trying to pay attention to who's logging into what kinds of things are actually working. And one of the things is I'm posting video lessons on YouTube, and you can see how many views you get on YouTube. And so one of the things that I noticed is I was posting 2 video lessons a week. And the first video lesson would have, 70 views. And then the second one would have like 20. And so I felt like that was really obvious data that the second video wasn't working. So I've started combining both my videos into one video and really deciding what is it that I need to tell them in this one video. It's been interesting to have, since I don't have faces in front of me and instead have data, to really, it's focused me more on data.
Mm-hmm. I think that's super interesting. Bodhi, you had mentioned too, as you've done Zooms and students have or have not shown up, and you just have this like black screen, And that's so drastically different from getting to see their little faces every day. And I think we kind of touched on this a little bit, but I don't know if you wanted to touch on it a little bit more, but those social interactions that are usually provided in a, safe way in our brick and mortar schools, how do we still provide social interactions that aren't necessarily those academic engagements in this environment? I don't know if you had anything specific to that as well.
Yeah, in fact, I just spent about 45 minutes with my teammates talking about just that, like what are some options that we can do. So I really like Danette's suggestion of hosting a team-wide, Danette, I can't remember what you called it, it wasn't a social group, but anyway, a team time that's not graded. And
Kind of like it was like a humanities light, I think you called it.
Oh, is that what you'd like me to talk about?
No, I think it was right. Like, so it wasn't so much academic. It was more like just the social experience, like getting engaged with each other.
Yeah, and so I was hoping that our book clubs would do that, but when I kept seeing those black boxes, instead of, of course I felt pretty beaten down for a while, but that's data. If it's not working, it's not working. Right. And so I either need to redesign the presentation or the how students receive the information or how we interact with it, or what it is that I'm hoping that we do during that. So some of the things that we discussed were maybe hosting silent reading time as a group. We also talked about the possibility of having some non-academic, like an options page in our Canvas. So if you're not feeling up for a full 30 minutes of humanities work today, you could try maybe listening to one of my favorite podcasts is Meditative Stories, where they'll tell you a 30-minute story. And there are a couple of prompts of mindfulness in there. So they could listen to narrative, for example. And then asking the kids, what do you want to do through Zoom that your teachers can set up for you so that you can get that social interaction with classmates that maybe you haven't seen in a while. So.
All right. So I don't know, Chris, if you want us to go into the Padlet, if anyone has shared there, if we want to open it up to any of our attendees to share out.
I definitely think that we could, if you're okay with this, like putting up the Padlet on your screen so everybody can see it back where they're sitting and watching this. But definitely one thing we are encouraging our friends who are listening today is to go ahead and it's anonymous, so don't feel like we're not going to hunt you down. You don't have to put your name down. But we'd love to hear back from you. I think part of us, well, okay, if we all have one thing in common, it's that every single teacher in this state is having to experience remote learning, distance learning in some fashion. And then we also have one more thing in common is that there's no manual for this. And so we're really, this reflective piece that you've been hearing from teachers is us really reflecting on what's been going well and what we've tweaked, what we have to change. And it's going to be constant. And so I think we would love to encourage you to share your reflections. We also encourage you to start reflecting on your own. I don't know, again, if you're journaling, if you do that type of thing, but definitely reflecting on those and keeping those notes, because if we have to go to the fall in a different format than we're used to, this is where we're doing the work right now. And we've gotten some great feedback already, Nicole, on the Padlet. And again, if you want to connect with some other educators in Oregon, from Beaverton, from other schools I just connected with, I think it was actually, I think her name is Amy. She's also put her connection piece down there on the Twitter. So we encourage you all to go ahead and add your information there.
And I will say, additionally, we're going to be hosting another event similar to this with elementary focus. And then, just out of curiosity, if people are interested, since we were so kind of heavily geared more towards just generalities and a lot of like ELA options, we're thinking about maybe offering something that's more math and science based as well. So letting us know what your thoughts are and what you'd like to hear and see.
We are going to have some other events coming up. Like we said, Monday is going to be the elementary one. We're doing the same type of paneling. And then next week, we're going to go ahead and offer some other ones as well. So I think we'll hang out for another minute Nicole, right? I think we can hang out. If anybody wants to hang out with us and ask us some questions, we're more than happy to answer in the chat, or if you want to connect with us on Twitter, or like, Claudia's using Instagram. So if you want to connect with teachers in that direction, but we'll hang out for a few more minutes. We are